quick introduction to aggregate supply. So we've got this concept of aggregation. So if we aggregate in macroeconomics, we're just adding everything together. So this is not just one firm in one market, it is multiple firms, multiple markets, the entire economy of a country. So first of all, we're going to look at aggregate supply in the short run. Now, the short run is not a period of time. The short run is when one factor of production is fixed. At least one factor of production is fixed. So it could be land, labour, capital. Any of those factors are fixed, then we're operating in the short run. Okay? So short run aggregate supply as opposed to long run aggregate supply. We can also consider this to be actual output and long run aggregate supply to be potential output. Imagine you've got a production possibility frontier and you've got a curve which shows you this. Okay, if you're operating in the long run, you are anywhere on this curve. Okay, this is the full potential output of the economy. In reality, however, we know that economies operate within their potential output, at their short-run aggregate supply or their actual output. There will always be some resources in the economy that are not being fully utilised. Okay, so there will always be some form of unemployment or underemployment. So next we're going to consider this. What are the factors that might shift aggregate supply? So if we take this basic macroeconomic diagram, we see aggregate demand and aggregate supply that create an equilibrium point in the economy. That gives us our average price levels in the economy and it gives us our actual output in the economy. This is GDP, right? The output in the economy. Now, this shows us that actually short-run aggregate supply could be shifted to the right, or in this diagram, it could be shifted to the left. And then we need to think, well, what are the factors that might make aggregate supply shift? Okay, and here they are here, these five. So the first one are wage levels. So think about it, if wage levels in an economy go up, that means the cost of production is going up and we see a shift to the left in aggregate supply. If wage levels in an economy are going down, that means cost of production is falling and we see aggregate supply shift to the right. If raw material costs increase, we see a shift to the left. Raw material costs fall, we see a shift to the right. Taxation. In this case, we're talking corporation tax. Okay, that's a tax on profits for a business. If a government decides they will tax businesses less, then this will encourage an increase in production, a shift to the right. If a government decides to tax businesses' profits more, we will see a shift to the left in aggregate supply. Next, exchange rates. So, in a floating exchange rate system, we can have an appreciation, strengthening of a currency, or a depreciation, a weakening of a currency. In this situation, we have to consider if we are buying raw materials from abroad and they become more expensive, or if we are selling our products abroad and they are less desirable for export. This will have an impact on whether you produce more of those goods or less of those goods. And finally, levels of productivity. So levels of productivity basically suggest if we find new ways of doing things that make us more productive, then we will see that we will produce more goods at the same cost. And that's a shift to the right. If we have a fall in productivity, maybe due to some form of breakdown in technology or maybe a change in working practices. It might mean that the government introduces a new law that we have to follow or something like that, new health and safety regulations. We might see that actually productivity falls and therefore aggregate supply shifts to the left. Okay, that's a basic introduction to aggregate supply. Let's look now what happens when we have a shift to the left or a shift to the right in aggregate supply. So first of all, macroeconomic effects. Shift to the left causes prices in the economy to go up, inflation, and it also causes a reduction in output, potentially recession, a reduction in the size of the economy overall. So that's a shift to the left, causes inflation, cost push inflation, and we also see a reduction in overall output. A shift to the right in aggregate supply, this creates a fall in average price levels or deflation, and it also means that we see an increase in overall output or what we call economic growth. So think about it, when you're faced with a question that says there's a shift in aggregate supply, what are the macroeconomic effects? You can talk about the impact on inflation, the impact on output, the impact on GDP, the impact on jobs, the impact on firms, the workers, the government. All those things will come into that argument. So you can talk about what happens when there's a shift to the right or what happens when there's a shift to the left. Okay, we'll leave it at that. We'll come back and next I think we will probably have a time to look at long run aggregate supply.
Thank you, Mr. Friend.
Thank you very much. Like and subscribe. Speak to you soon.